Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm presenting on behalf of myself and Erika Svendsen and reflecting on work that's a co-creation with many of the people who we name and thank through this presentation. I'll share a few examples of programs that we've held at the New York City Urban Field Station that aim to learn from place in order to support what we call the stewards of stewardship. That is the natural resource managers, civic leaders, environmental educators, and ecological artists who care for the land and engage the public. My talk builds on some of the themes raised by my co-panelists and shows how we adapted this work to our New York City context. I'll just name a few of the themes I've noticed: learning throughout the life course, growing relationships between people, place, and plants, and working across generations. So we start from a biocultural stewardship approach that thinks of natural resources as cultural resources. And with that framing in mind, we set out to explore these key questions. How do we strengthen a community of practice engaged in caring for urban environments? How do we share our lived experiences across cultures and contexts, urban, rural, and indigenous? And how do we learn from place, not just about place? And why is this important for urban and community forestry? Picking up the introduction Heather offered, Hālau ʻŌhiʻa is the creation of Kekuhi Keawika Nakaole. Hālau ʻŌhiʻa is an intensive professional and personal development training program in Hawaii lifeways. It was created with the goals of 1, fostering a working knowledge of Native Hawaiian perspectives and practices related to natural resources, 2, gaining skills founded in Hawaii lifeways to enhance how we engage with our human and non-human communities, and 3, strengthen relationship among members of the natural resources and conservation community. Part of the course's pedagogy is based on learning together across levels of professional experience and age groups. The program's framework is based in kinship. Involving children and families helps participants engage and extend these familial relationships into their personal and home lives. And we recognize that the close and even sacred relationships with nature that many of us developed as children have become muted and atrophy from lack of attention. Hālau ʻŌhiʻa encouraged us to ask, how would re-engaging our earlier ways of knowing nature change us as people and as stewards? So through exchanges among the authors, we found the themes of Hālau ʻŌhiʻa resonated strongly, and we saw great potential for natural resource practitioners from Hawaii and New York City to learn together. We have a need to share stories and learn from diverse communities, places, and practices. We recognize the need for a transboundary space to engage in conversations about what we do, to be inspired, and to create new ideas to take back into our workplaces. So in October 2017, we organized Learning from Place, a 2-day exchange. It was led by Kekuhi and framed with Hālau ʻŌhiʻa approaches, exercises, and concepts. We experienced embodied knowledge through hula, dance, string images, and the co-creation of a kuahu, or altar, adorned with meaningful plants. We took part in and then created our own mele komo, ritual protocols for requesting permission to enter a space. We got outside and started to socialize and observe our local places. And during our time together, we engaged 2 locations with different green spaces and different modes of stewardship: Bushwick Inlet Park on the Brooklyn waterfront and Queens Botanical Garden in downtown Flushing. We believe it's important to identify various meanings and concepts of stewardship because they shape the conceptualization of conservation action, policies, resource management, and our understandings of rights and responsibilities people have to their places. It is our belief that articulating and aligning these perspectives and definitions can improve our capacity to support stewardship and sustainable ways of being in the world. We also deepened our understanding of these relationships through the lens of ka'au, or stories. We listened to and observed Kekuhi share the ka'au of Papa and Wakea, Earth Mother and Sky Father, who birthed the Hawaiian Islands, the taro plant, and the Hawaiian people. And in small groups, we explored the origin stories of other people and places. We then started to tell each other our stories and draw together and combine our stories. We came together to perform our own creation stories and poetic texts inspired by the places, plants, and people that surround us and that we carry with us. Over the course of these 2 days, we observed a deep hunger for more, the need to keep this conversation and creative exchange going. So we decided to create a space to continue this work. Working in a city of 8.4 million, we felt quite a bit of anxiety that any table we set is not inclusive enough. but Kekuhi encouraged us to start with who we know and create dialogues among our community of practice. So we created a voluntary bi-monthly or monthly program that met over the course of 2 years with a goal of learning from place and from each other. Frankly, we also had some anxiety that we did not have a master teacher or kumu, nor did we have a scaffold of Hawaii lifeways to anchor our learnings in deeply held epistemologies, worldviews, and practices. So instead, we decided to embrace our diversity. We all became teachers and learners and set up a rotating structure of speakers from among our group and guests, a true salon. We adopted some of the practices from Hālau ʻŌhiʻa and adapted them to our context. We created a set of ground rules to open each meeting as an opening protocol. We always aimed to share food, and we tried to get outside. This slide shows just a sampling of what the salons covered and the themes we explored. We greeted visitors from the College of Menominee Nation with urban foresters here in Brooklyn, focusing on local ecological knowledge and indigenous knowledge. We hiked in Central Park while discussing the book Trace and tracking the site of the former Seneca village, resurfacing African American place histories. And we ate with salon members who hosted a Tu B'Shavat Seder, engaging with Jewish environmental practices in New York City. Clearly, any one of these salons could become an entire course or program at the depth of Hālau ʻŌhiʻa in the right hands. But what we did accomplish was exposing ourselves and our fellow travelers to a wide array of ways of connecting to place, bringing our personal and cultural stories into our workplace settings and seeing our whole selves in this work, and starting to surface and amplify some stories that are less commonly told in a natural resource management context. Salons are not the only programmatic form this work has taken in New York City. We've also begun to embrace artistic practices as a way of knowing that has previously largely been missing from our research and managerial arenas. We've created an artist in residency program where we embed and affiliate artists with our urban field station scientists and managers. We do this to support the co-production of knowledge across disciplinary boundaries, to engage our research and the public in new ways, and to support diversity, equity, and inclusion. Just a few things we've observed over our 3 years of this pilot program. Artists can help us to pose new questions that we wouldn't otherwise have asked, like Mary Mattingly, whose initial question was, what would it look like if food was a public service? This evolved into Swale, a floating food forest on the commons of the water that encourages a culture of foraging, sharing, and care. Artists engage in multiple methodologies such as photo documenting, interviews, and walking observations. Now, often in art science collaborations, folks expect artists to, quote, work with scientific data as a medium, and this does happen, but they also produce data. They generate archives, as in the prodigious work of Matt Jensen, a close observer of New York City neighborhoods and green spaces. Artists can promote emotional responses that reframe or change our relationship to our environment, such as Heidi Nielsen's moon arrow, which she installed in public parks and continuously points at the moon, encouraging us to connect to our cosmos with humor and delight, even here as residents in New York City. And artists work with foresight knowledge, envisioning and enacting new worlds, such as Julia Oldham's Undiscovered City, where she rendered future visions of New York City, playing with the ways in which we might cohabit with animals and live with our changing climate. Going forward with this residency, which we're now expanding to multiple locations across the Urban Field Station network, we're not commissioning work. This is not a public art program. We support transdisciplinary inquiry, giving artists, scientists, and managers exposure to each other's worlds and ways of thinking so that we can produce new knowledge together. Our ultimate goal is that this knowledge can help steer us towards more just, resilient, and inclusive cities. So what have we learned? How do we strengthen cross-cultural competencies and build shared cultures of care? I'll leave you with these 3 thoughts. We need more ways to come together, bringing our whole selves outside of organizational hierarchies. We need to learn from stories, experiences, and emotions to bring a shared understanding and respect for difference through multiple ways of knowing and many modalities, including movement, song, food, shared work, and stories. And perhaps most importantly, we need to make space and take time for this work. It matters. Transformation will be slow, but like planting a tree, it will bear fruit over time. I want to thank my co-authors and collaborators, and I look forward to continuing these discussions. Thank you.